That's why in Greek the term gospel is used.
Hold on with the language, though. Quick side question. So then, what's your thoughts on Lashawan Qadash?
Made up and fake.
Wow. So
Don't don't forget, there's a video circulating for the last 3 or 4 years of an Israelite elder telling you that the 12 tribes chart was made up.
yeah,
A lot of people are
valid. Yeah.
unfamiliar with that. All right, a lot of people are unfamiliar with that Israelite elder. That Israelite elder is one of my teachers. He just passed 2 years ago. His name is Chief of Chiefs, Chief Naphtali. He comes from the Rabbi Matthew School of Thought. He knew Abba Bivens, the guy who started One West from since he was a child. They knew each other, and so in our community, we've always understood what Hebrew is from what Hebrew is not. Lashawan Kodash is a horrible way to represent the Hebrew language. Anyone speaking Lashawan Kodash, I already know that they have no understanding of Hebrew. In Lashawan Kodash, two vowels exist. That's I and Ah, which is crazy. Hebrew is the source and origin of all languages. Hence, in our tradition, we speak of Hebrew as being Sefat HaEmet, the language of truth. We also speak of it being Sefat HaDeoriah, the language of creation. Hebrew is the source of all languages. So if Hebrew is the source of all languages, how could it be remotely possible that we only have two vowels, while in every language in the world there are several vowels? If all language comes from Hebrew, then you should be able to see all facets of everyone's language embedded in the Hebrew language, which you can. I'll give you one example. So if we go by Lashawan Kodash, the word for king and the word for angel is the same word, but it's not. The word for king in Hebrew is melech, melech. The word for angel is malach. The only difference is the vowel shift. But in Lashawan Kodash, they're gonna say malach. But we're not gonna know if they're talking about the king. We're not gonna know if they're talking about the angel. We're not gonna know if they're talking about the Hebrew word for message. See how that don't make sense real quick? In
exactly. And all
Lashawan
the
Kodash,
vowel points.
exactly. In Lashawan Kodash, the word for fat and the word for milk is the same word. Because in Hebrew, fat is kalev and milk is kalav. Only difference is vowel shifting and pronunciation. But in Lashawan Kodash, they're going to call it kalav. How do we know we're talking about fat and milk? Oh, I don't care if it's talking about fat and milk. It ain't that deep. Well, it should be that deep because there's a very Torah injunction that says you should not boil a kid in its mother's milk. But if we're going by Lashawan Kodash, are we to read that as you should not boil a kid in its mother's fat? You see how misunderstanding and misrepresenting the language can also interfere with our understanding of what the Torah is saying?
Yeah, yeah. And so now you're using beef broth or anything like that, you might be in sin.
You speak to anyone that knows Lashawan Kodash supposedly and give them a child's test on Hebrew and they fail horribly. They don't have no understanding of Hebrew grammar, syntax, right? If I give them a grammar study question on basic things in the book of Genesis, they fail horribly, right? When you hear people doing Lashawan Kodash, they do foolish things like this. You ask them, well, what does the word father mean? And they say, oh, well, you look at the pictograph and Aleph is the ox. So and the word bait is the house. So the word for father is the strength of the house. In the Hebrew community, the vast majority of them in their ignorance say, yeah, teach, I'll teach. No, he's not teaching because the word for ox is shore. And it's the word that is most commonly used to describe an ox. Sure, the word aluf or aleph can mean an ox in Hebrew, but it's very seldomly used. So if it's very seldomly used, I would not want to say that that is the word for ox. I would want to follow the Torah and the Tanakh's template by using the word shore, which is the word that is mostly used to describe an ox. The word aleph in Hebrew literally means to teach. But don't believe me. Open up the book of Job. Go to chapter 33. Now go to verse 33. When Job is being corrected by his brothers, the youngest among them, Elihu, says to him, listen to me and I shall teach you wisdom. Or he says, We alefcha chokmah. We alefcha. We means and, alef, teach, ka, you. We alefka, and I will teach you. Aleph means to teach. Beit certainly means house. So father is not the strength of the house, he's the teacher of the house.